Well, joining us now for more is Behnam Ben Taleblu, senior analyst for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C. And Behnam, thanks for coming back. Well, you've heard from the IAEA director, sounding confident that Iran doesn't have that amount of material yet. But how confident can we be in that judgment, given what we know about the efforts by the Iranian regime to conceal its enrichment activities?
Well, you point to two very important questions here, Kalev, and always great to be with you. One, of course, is Iran's concealing of its larger uranium program and its nuclear program. We know that every single site today, which is a overt site, a public site, was actually once a secret site or a covert site. So if Iran is going to make a dash towards a weapon, it's likely not going to come from these places that the IAEA is investigating and taking samples from, because Iran has learned how to better hide and obfuscate most parts of its program. The challenge for us here, of course, is to not have a debate amongst ourselves and not to become Iran's lawyers. The IAEA, for instance, was putting quite a bit of pressure on Iran earlier this year, but it seems like they just changed their tune. I was in talks with some colleagues this morning about the term grossly used, significant quantity. And actually, if you look back at even New York Times reporting from this spring, people who have cited the Institute for Science and International Security have said that as early as this spring, Iran could have had one bomb's worth if it took what it had in terms of low-enriched uranium then and enriched it all the way up to weapons grade.
Right. Now, I want to...
Same organization, the Institute for Science...
No, go on. I'm going on, ma'am. Go, continue.
That same organization, as of September, has actually said Iran could develop up to 2 bombs worth. And the reason is it's not going to be a perfect nuclear weapon, but it could be a rough implosion device.
Right. Now, I want to ask you about a meeting that was held between China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi and, of course, his Iranian counterpart, Mohammad Javad Zarif. Of course, we know that the Chinese have said, for example, they're not going to abide by U.S. calls to maintain this arms embargo on Iran, and they wanted to see the nuclear deal maintained. Now, Wang Yi is calling for a new forum to diffuse tensions in the Middle East, reiterating Beijing's support for Tehran. So help us understand the Chinese position here. How much could we expect that they will continue to come to the aid of Iran in the coming months, especially, for example, as that arms embargo expires?
Well, on the one hand, we know that China has always been, more than a fair weather friend for Tehran. It's been a great friend for Tehran. Pre-Obama sanctions and post-Obama sanctions and pre-Trump's resurrection of those sanctions and during Trump's implementation and addition of those sanctions, China has steadily been the largest legal and illegal purchaser of Iranian oil. So that is how critical Iran is for the Chinese economy when you talk about hydrocarbons, as well as some of the other countries in the Persian Gulf. But this being said, China, the more it sees the U.S. trying to pivot out of the Middle East, the more it's going to add to, China is going to add to its economic interest in the region with political and military assets. It doesn't mean that China is going to deploy to the Middle East or Persian Gulf tomorrow, but it's going to feel comfortable acting more robustly in defense of those, until now, exclusively economic interests. So I would be very, very cautious of any Chinese-led initiative to restore peace, stability, order to the Persian Gulf area. This is about state sponsorship of terrorism, nuclear weapons, and great power competition all rolled into one. So Washington has to be very, very careful here about the growing Chinese-Iranian partnership.
Right. And Behnam, I want to ask you just briefly on the Iranian economy. We saw their currency, the rial, fall to a new low against the U.S. dollar on Saturday. Of course, it's feeling the pressure of those U.S. sanctions and the COVID-19 crisis there. Is the Iranian economy really at a new low here?
That's absolutely right. And macroeconomic contraction is set to continue with the new sanctions the Trump administration opposed and hopefully is slated to enforce this week. Those are sector, basically drawing a circle around much of Iran's financial sector and trying to disconnect or pressure some of these banks to be disconnected from the larger international financial system, particularly from SWIFT, which actually engages in financial messaging services for lots of banks worldwide. So 2 years into max pressure, there were still lots of Iranian banks still connected to the international financial system.
All right. Behnam Ben Taleblu from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you for joining us on The Rundown.
Pleasure.
Now,